Henry Marsh, and finally, Matters of Life and Death. In and finally, Matters of Life and Death, renowned British neurosurgeon Henry Marsh offers an intimate glimpse into his own confrontation with aging and illness, reflecting on a storied career from a new and vulnerable perspective. As Marsh faces a prostate cancer diagnosis, the reader is taken through the emotional and existential shifts that occur when a doctor becomes a patient. This narrative is not just about the physiological battle against disease, but about grappling with the pride and humility that accompany a life dedicated to saving others. Readers can anticipate a profound exploration of themes like vulnerability, empathy in medical practice, the transition from professional to personal health crises, and the philosophical acceptance of mortality. Marsh's personal stories reveal the intricate balance between scientific detachment and human empathy, providing valuable insights into both the medical world and the universal human experience of facing one's own mortality.
Facing mortality. Every new medical student seems to go through a phase of hypochondria, imagining themselves afflicted with every ailment they study. Remarkably, they grow out of it, but Dr. Henry Marsh, a distinguished neurosurgeon, discovers another dangerous delusion, the belief that doctors themselves are immune to illness. Marsh, confident in this belief, volunteers for a brain scan study at 69, 4 years post-retirement. Expecting an image of a youthful, healthy brain, he instead faces the reality of aging. Despite decades of ignored prostate issues and a nagging sense of invincibility, Marsh delays getting a prostate exam. The arrival of COVID-19 pushes any urgency to the background until he finally acquiesces in the fall of 2020. A routine checkup reveals a firm prostate, sparking a series of tests and shattering the facade of immunity. The blood work shows alarming levels of prostate-specific antigen, PSA, hitting 127, exceptionally high when compared to typical prostate cancer levels below 20. Faced with this stark reality, Marsh turns to online research, only to find grim statistics. A PSA over 100 usually forecasts a life expectancy of under 2 years. Referred to London's Royal Marsden Hospital, he receives the expected diagnosis, prostate cancer, with a high probability of metastasis. In the world of specialists and surgeries Marsh once navigated with confidence, he now confronts a hard truth: should the cancer have spread, treatment might prove futile, confirming the dire predictions made by his hastily Googled research. Reality hits, making his own mortality an undeniable companion. Navigating vulnerability. Returning to the Royal Marsden feels like stepping into familiar territory for Marsh, a seasoned surgeon who had once graced its halls to deliver a prestigious lecture. Now, as a patient, the world-renowned cancer hospital takes on a different guise. From the moment he's led through a series of sterile rooms, weighed, and examined, Marsh experiences the unsettling transition from doctor to patient, a shift that infuses even mundane waiting with a lurking fear. This unease amplifies over 2 weeks with no word from the oncologist, until Marsh, caught between timidity and the need for answers, finally makes the call. The overlooked scans are a fortunate catch, revealing that the cancer hasn't metastasized. The relief washes over Marsh, overriding any frustration about the missed communication and awkward demeanor of his oncologist. However, the structural shortcomings of the healthcare system remain inescapable, highlighted during a follow-up visit. With the recommendation of chemical castration as a proactive step, the oncologist hands over the prescription without so much as meeting Marsh's eyes or offering guidance on what lies ahead. Caught off guard by his own vulnerability and uncertainty, Marsh finds himself hesitating to ask necessary questions. The lone piece of advice, to consume 2.5 liters of water daily, becomes Marsh's only compass in this uncharted phase of his life. But even this advice is fraught with challenges. A routine run becomes a rush for the nearest toilet, a tangible reminder of the unfamiliar terrain he's navigating. Through these experiences, Marsh is left to reconcile his sense of authority and knowledge as a doctor with the stark, often unsettling realities of being a patient. Ghosts and empathy. Prostate cancer draws strength from testosterone, and castration emerges as a method to stifle the hormone and shrink tumors. Marsh knows the science and dangers, yet finds himself lost in a maze of online research. The internet amplifies his fears and briefly lifts his spirits with each scroll, but deep down, he knows the virtual advice can't match the care of a genuine doctor, someone to truly listen and empathize. This realization is bittersweet, as Marsh acknowledges his past shortcomings as a doctor who failed to fully grasp his patients' anxieties. Memories flood back, and his old patients revisit him like persistent ghosts, seeking compassion that was once missing. These memories are piled up physically, too, in the stacks of medical files teetering in his garage, legal obligations rather than cherished keepsakes. Each file is a silent reminder of a time when Marsh could have shown more kindness. Accepting this duality is difficult. Marsh understands that true empathy could hinder a doctor's precision and focus, especially when the slightest medical miscalculation could mean life or death. The divide between medical staff and patients is essential, creating a necessary detachment that allows doctors to perform their duties without the baggage of personal turmoil. This regimented order, while logical in theory, sits heavy on Marsh's mind, particularly now, as he reflects on his role from the perspective of a patient himself. To balance these feelings, he offers himself a measure of empathy, recognizing that the boundaries that once defined his professional life were also his armor. Embracing life's transitions. A diagnosis of cancer prompts Marsh to scrutinize both his past as a doctor and his present as a patient. Initially burdened by regrets and dark thoughts, he begins to fantasize about the grim potential outcomes. Surprisingly, these imaginings serve as a form of therapy, helping him confront his fears and accept the time he has left. Recognizing the natural course of life, he decides to step aside for the next generation, practicing daily gratitude to stave off worry. Abandoning plans to retire at his Oxford cottage, Marsh opts to stay in London to be closer to his family, especially his granddaughters. Rather than lament the sale of the cottage, he finds solace in having revived it, looking forward to its new owner's enjoyment. Marsh pours himself into his hobbies, like woodworking, constructing a large dollhouse and crafting fairy tales for his granddaughters over FaceTime. This storytelling tradition traces back to the first COVID-19 lockdown, with the tales centering around a character named Alessia. Alessia's adventures blend fantasy with reality, touching on themes like climate change and inclusivity, featuring characters such as a unicorn afflicted by global warming and a beloved gender-ambiguous dragon. Simultaneously, Marsh undergoes hormone therapy, a prelude to the radiation treatment he'll receive at a familiar hospital, previously a bastion of professional collaboration. Though the transition from doctor to patient is challenging, after a few weeks of treatment, Marsh gradually adapts to the rhythms of medical appointments. This journey reflects a broader acceptance, emphasizing the importance of adjusting and finding joy in new roles and experiences despite life's uncertainties. Amidst shadows and light. Marsh's life, much like his beloved Alessia fairy tales, seems destined for a joyful resolution, but reality takes a different turn. After 6 taxing months following his radiation therapy, Marsh receives uplifting news: his PSA level has miraculously dropped to 0.1, the lowest possible. This may not signal a cure, yet the cancer is at bay, at least for now. Elation is short-lived, however, as just 10 days later, Russia's invasion of Ukraine casts a somber shadow over his happiness. For years, Marsh has dedicated himself to Ukraine, offering his skills freely to advance neurosurgery there, and forming deep personal bonds. During the conflict, these connections spur him to make nightly calls to Lviv and Kiev, determined to ensure his friends' safety. The blaring air raid sirens that sometimes interrupt these calls are poignant reminders of the chaos around them. Marsh reflects on a previous collaboration with a Ukrainian neurosurgeon, a relationship strained by ethical challenges and remnants of Soviet-era practices like nepotism and bribery. Despite the obstacles, Marsh maintains a deep respect for the country's resilience. During a conversation with a Ukrainian soldier injured in the Donbass, Marsh is struck by the soldier's pragmatic view of his Russian adversaries: they are merely men doing their duty, much like himself. Marsh's ties to Ukraine are also deeply personal. It is here that he confronts the reality of his own career at its twilight. When Alina, a bright Ukrainian doctor, asks Marsh to perform surgery on a formidable acoustic neuroma, he faces a pivotal decision. Recognizing that his younger London colleague could handle the surgery equally, if not more skillfully, he chooses to step back, guiding Alina instead to his colleague. The successful operation solidifies in Marsh the wisdom of his choice and marks the end of his days in the operating room. Yet, Marsh is not resigned to fade away quietly. He resolves to continue his mentorship, telling stories that reflect optimism and crafting miniature havens in the form of dollhouses. His journey underlines a universal truth faced by even the most experienced doctors: navigating one's own aging and the shifts it brings requires grace and acceptance, a transition that, like any fairy tale worth telling, carries its own unique blend of joy and challenge.
Henry Marsh's journey through and finally captures the stark irony of a neurosurgeon encountering his own health challenges, a confrontation that many can relate to despite their background. His reflections reveal key takeaways: the importance of humility and empathy in medicine, the struggle to reconcile professional detachment with the personal impact of illness, and the ultimate acceptance of life's impermanence. Through his poignant and candid narrative, Marsh underscores the need to cherish every moment, find gratitude amidst uncertainty, and understand that it's not just the longevity, but the quality of life that truly matters. His transition from the operating table to a patient's chair serves as a powerful reminder of the shared vulnerability in the face of mortality, offering both a deeply personal story and universal lessons on resilience and acceptance in the twilight years. Readers leave with an enriched understanding of life, death, and the enduring power of compassion.